Happy New Year! Yes, it's 2025. Can you believe it? It's a quarter of a century since the year 2000. Holy shit. It's nearly a quarter of a century since we had any good movies and TV as well. uh, anyway, as has become tradition on this channel since 2020, this is when I do my year overview of the previous year and talk about the new things I saw in the previous year, in this case, 2024. I don't know how long this one is going to last, to be honest, because I really didn't see very much in 2024. Partly because of, massive move and all of that, and partly because there wasn't really a whole lot I was interested in seeing in 2024. Let's face it, TV's dead and movies aren't far behind. But I will go through what little I saw in the year and see whether I hated it or not. Now, the first new thing that I saw all the way back in January of last year was the Netflix miniseries Fool Me Once, which was a little mini thriller series. I believe it was based on a book about a former soldier who seemingly exited in disgrace and who's already lost her sister to a violent home invasion, witnessing her husband getting gunned down by robbers, only to then see him on a hidden nanny cam not long after the funeral. This was a pretty good little thriller. It was so kind of fun. It's surprising to see Joanna Lumley being in it. Bloody hell, she's still going. Again, I mean, this was solid, entertaining stuff. They call these limited series now. We used to call them mini series at one point. Um, this is the sort of thing they can generally do quite well on streaming services. The problem is that it's not a proper series, is it? Because it's not really the kind of thing you're going to watch again, and it's not really the kind of thing you can do multiple seasons of. Again, it's okay as a little mini series, but what's happened to proper television? Answers on a postcard. Now, in terms of movies, the first new movie I saw at the cinema was in April when I went to see The First Omen. Now, to be honest, I thought this sounded like a terrible idea from the start, but there were so many horror YouTubers, most of the ones that I follow, in fact, who were orgasming over it and saying how wonderful and brilliant it was that it. I'm like, okay, and it persuaded me to give it a try, which was a huge mistake because I thought it was a steaming load of bullshit. It was boring, trite, predictable, utterly lifeless, indistinguishable from every other supernatural demon movie that we've been force fed non stop for the last 10 to 15 years. And it couldn't even keep the continuity right with the movie that it was pretending to be a prequel to. There was like one YouTube critic that I follow, Pizzowl, who said it bored him to tears, with the rest of them apparently having had religious experiences. He was right. Utter garbage, and frankly, almost like a poster child for everything I hate about modern cinema. This was the most boring thing I've had the misfortune to have to sit through the whole bloody lot of in a really long time. I hated this movie, and it did not start my new movies of 2024 off with a hell of a lot of enthusiasm. Now, showing what a glutton for punishment I am, I think I went to the cinema like literally the next week, which was given that it had been quite some time since I'd been to the cinema in April. What was the last one in last year? I mean, the year before last year. I can't remember, but at least 4 or 5 months. But I went to see Abigail. For anyone who doesn't know, a group of criminals kidnap a 12-year-old girl for ransom, only to find the tables turned when she turns out to be a bloodthirsty vampire. It was okay. It was nowhere near as bad as The First Omen, but it's still been rather overrated by lots of people, in my opinion. At some points had me engaged, but it took way too long to get going, particularly when they made no effort to keep the fact that she was a vampire a surprise, you know. That was part of the marketing from the movie, from like the trailer onwards. So it's like, well, why did we take like, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes to get to the point then? And to me, it went on too long as well. And there was a very strange switcheroo in the last act, which seems to have been done either A, so they can maybe do a sequel, although that seems fairly unlikely. I mean, the actress is going to grow up fairly quickly, so how are you going to do a sequel, really? It seems kind of tough. That's the problem with vampires. People age, vampires don't. Or B, because we couldn't actually have a female be the villain, so the white male in the cast had to turn out to be the real big bad. What? That was a really odd thing to do, to make a movie about where the gimmick is that the villain is a little girl vampire, and then somebody else is the main villain at the end. Okay, somebody hasn't got the courage of their convictions. Look, this was watchable, but it was nothing to write home about, and it certainly wasn't the second coming of vampires that some were touting it as. Of the radio silence bunch that I've seen, this was slightly above Scream 5, below Scream 6, and not even in the same freaking league as Ready or Not. I'm sorry, but it just wasn't. I think the next new movie that I saw was in June, which was on Netflix. It was a 2023 movie, I believe, and I never even heard of it, which was The Conference, which was a Swedish slasher flick about a bunch of municipality workers who go on a retreat to celebrate the imminent breaking ground of a new shopping mall that most locals didn't actually want to begin with, only to find themselves the target of a psycho killer with a score to settle. This was certainly the best new horror movie that I saw this year. It was very entertaining. Felt vaguely reminiscent of the 2006 British comedy horror Severance, in the sense of it kind of being like a work group being targeted by a psycho, and you've got that kind of the satire of office environments and politics and all that sort of thing. But it was different enough to not just feel like a complete rip-off, and it was a whole heap of fun. I think it's a crying shame. A, I never hear anybody talk about it, and B, it doesn't even seem to be available on any kind of physical media. It's just stuck on Netflix, hidden practically, which seems a real waste, because I thought that was a really, 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 really fun slasher, tongue-in-cheek horror. Really, really good. What a shame we can't buy the bloody thing. Now, honestly, about the last new thing I saw was in late July. It shows you what a terrible year it is. What is it, like 7 months away now? When I went to the cinema to see Deadpool and Wolverine. I can't remember, what was the last time I went to see a comic book movie? I rented Guardians 3 and No Way Home on YouTube. So the last time I went to see a comic book movie was Endgame in 2019. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Well, is it the greatest movie ever made? No, but it was a lot of fun. But I did not get bored and start wishing for it to end, so that puts it above the other two movies I saw at the cinema this year. It was fine. It was fine. Probably about as good as the first one, slightly better than the second one. I know some people are hating on it. Me. I want to seem cool. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. Very entertaining. Good fun. Again, is it the salvation of cinema or Marvel? No, but it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. And moving on to the last few things that I saw, literally just in the last couple of weeks. Will we continue what a winning streak 2024 has been, or could we possibly turn things around? Well, no, not really. One of the last things I saw was, or started to see at least, was the Celestial Toy Maker animation. I wasn't going to buy this. In fact, I didn't buy it for, well, up until this month, actually. I bought it in like a fit of, like I think I said before, a fit of euphoria based off the 3D animation of the Wheel in Space, done by those wonderfully talented people that the BBC refused to employ because their mates need the money. Yeah, it was fucking terrible. I'm sorry. I turned it off a few minutes into episode 2. To be fair, I don't think it was entirely the animation. It's not very good and it's wildly inappropriate to the audio. But to be honest, I've seen a crude fan animation of it a few years ago. I think it's just a boring story, to be honest. I just don't think it's a very good story that in any way lived up to the reputation that it had for a long time. It's just not very good, and the animation did not help. Sorry. And basically the last new thing that I saw, I had to buy the DVD because for some bleeding reason Google is being really bloody awkward since I moved. Even though I've now linked the account to a UK bank account, it's refusing to let me rent anything off of YouTube. So I had to buy the freaking DVD if I wanted to see it. Was Late Night with the Devil. This got a lot of hype and a lot of praise, and I found it meh. To be fair, it wasn't awful. I mean, it wasn't the first Omen bad or anything like that. I'd more put it on the same level as like Abigail, in the sense that it's just sort of okay-ish, I guess. But I'm not likely to go back and watch it anytime soon. I mean, to a large degree, it appears to be heavily influenced by Ghostwatch, which is way better. I just didn't see anything all that particularly special about it, basically. It's a Ghostwatch rip-off mixed with a bit of an Exorcist rip-off, done in a found footage way. The found footage stuff didn't really make a whole lot of sense, did it? Because the show stuff was 4. Why was the show stuff 4.3 and kind of videotape quality, while the behind the scenes stuff was magically 16.9 and perfect digital? Somebody explain that. That just didn't work for me either. Again, it wasn't bad. I watched it all. It wasn't awful, but I really don't see what everybody's getting so excited over. It wasn't great. It wasn't the future of horror. It was mid. It was mid. And unfortunately, that's about it for this year. I mean, what a year, man. One thing on telly or streaming, which isn't real telly, as I said anyway, which was okay-ish, and one movie that I kind of liked, which was Deadpool and Wolverine. The rest being mid to just plain shite. It's sad. I'm starting to wonder about the validity of doing these, to be honest, because, I mean, the first one that I did in 2020, it was all, there was a lot in it that was very positive and very, and now we're 4 years down the line from that, and it's basically, well, that was shit. And I'm not seeing much in 2025 that looks like it's going to be interesting or anything. Still very little in the way of movies. Nothing in the way of TV. TV's dead. Riveting stuff. Happy New Year.